It is funny that the train keeps moving with or without Trump in terms of where the sentiment is, where we still want North Korea as an enemy and we still want to isolate it, even though the vast majority of Koreans, who should be the only people having any sort of say in the future of their fucking country, they want it. They want peace. They want reunification. There's no reason that the U.S. empire has any say or should prevent this from happening whatsoever. And whatever they want to get peace, we should absolutely comply with it. So it's just disgusting. The arrogance of these people makes me sick.
I mean, it's incredibly arrogant. And the sad part is, I guess, that I see is, yeah, South Korea, North Korea, I could see them getting along and sort of having this new relationship. But I cannot imagine that the U.S. empire will be okay with North Korea existing as like a communist country, like even if they do nuclearize. I find that very hard to believe that we will just allow them to exist and not try to like destroy their economy or like change their entire landscape of their country.
No, we're absolutely not going to let that happen. And plus, Kim Jong-un has also said that he thought that denuclearization and demilitarization meant the U.S. away from, surrounding North Korea. We're submarines that reenact the invasion and overthrow of Kim Jong-un on a weekly basis. Tens of thousands of troops that are stationed in Guam and Korea in the South. So all of these things have to be taken into account. And, it goes both ways here. But of course, the U.S. is never going to relinquish any of that.
Well, interestingly, as bad as Trump is, he actually said he would consider removing troops from South Korea a couple days ago.
That's insane.
And everybody flipped the fuck out. Like Josh Rogan wrote a giant Washington Post editorial about
I'm glad he was inspired by that.
About how bad that would be. And all the think tanks were really upset. And it's like one of the only good things he's done. But who knows? It could just be another like thrown out there like, oh, maybe we should remove the troops from Syria, and then he'll just not do it.
Right.
So I just thought I'd record a little addendum here because when Abby and I recorded this podcast, it was right before the actual summit had taken place. Understandably, a lot of people, including Abby and I, really didn't know if this was actually going to move forward. There seemed to be so many hiccups and just strange events along the way. I mean, we already mentioned the fact that Bolton appeared to deliberately try to sabotage the summit by talking about the Libya model. We heard rumors that Pompeo didn't want Bolton involved in the summit at all. They thought it would be a bad idea. There's some really weird triangulation, sort of 3D, 4D chess, whatever you want to call it, theory that you can look at here, that this was Trump's attempt to use the big stick approach almost like as a fear tactic. Now, if that's the case, I think it was a horrible approach, and I think that it was extremely irresponsible, to say the least. I really have no idea. It is strange, though, that he would bring Bolton in right before he attempts this sort of summit and denuclearization deal with North Korea. Now, I have to admit, for myself, I was extremely skeptical that it was going to happen. I thought that if it did happen, Trump would have a scowl, he would act like a tough man, that he would do something to lower himself in the proceedings of it. But it turns out that this was, in my opinion, the first moment of his presidency where it appeared that he swallowed his pride and pretty much did most of the things right. I mean, if we're just isolating it just to the summit itself, it's actually very interesting how what he achieved basically is a moment in history. He's going to be in the history books now for something positive, whether people like it or not. That's something that he couldn't even have purchased. You could purchase a presidential campaign. You could purchase the presidency if you have enough money and power. But I think that this is different. This is something that money can't even buy. This is something that will enshrine him in the history books forever. Even if he just did it for his own ego, ultimately it doesn't matter because this was, at the very least, extremely positive symbolism. Even if things turn in the other direction eventually, I mean, just between the relations between North and South Korea, this is extremely positive. In terms of the equation with the United States and North Korea, we'll have to see how it pans out. Apparently, one of the things the media is sort of going after Trump for, and this is mainly sort of the neoliberal media like CNN and MSNBC. Actually, even Fox News is going after him for this. In spite of all of them going after him for this, I mean, he shook hands with Kim Jong-un. He was smiling He was being extremely friendly. He even saluted to a North Korean military general, which the media is lambasting him for right now. Trump bent over backwards. I mean, this is like the most I've ever seen him act polite and act diplomatic and presidential. And I hate using words like that because I don't give a fuck if someone acts presidential or not. I mean, ultimately what matters here is this is him talking to our quote unquote enemies and basically lifting the Iron Curtain, so to speak, on, you know, what North Korea is willing to share with the rest of the world and what can become of the future. My own reaction to the actual summit was I couldn't help it. I felt kind of emotional while I was watching it. I mean, and I understand that on some level that's just media propaganda, that's Trump's own sort of propaganda, but I was frankly sort of impressed by the way that he did it. I mean, he didn't let in most of the press pool. There was a very small amount of press there at the summit. It looked really, really good for him. And I also thought it looked good for Kim Jong-un. I mean, even if that the world hates Trump, this sort of brings him on another playing field of just appearing like he's not just this hidden, crazy dictator that the world sees him as anymore. He's actually trying to reach out to the United States. It's a very big deal. And the video footage is frankly kind of amazing. And I recommend everybody watch it who hadn't seen it yet. Try to watch it on C-SPAN where there's no commentary. I made a point to watch it live on C-SPAN, and I'm really glad I did because for the first 30, 40 minutes of the footage, there was no commentary whatsoever. And it was just sort of watching unfold. And I heard later, you know, from people who were watching MSNBC and CNN that they were just grilling. I mean, they were lambasting the entire idea of it. Why are we caving to dictators? Why are we talking to dictators? Why isn't Trump mentioning the human rights abuses in North Korea? All this kind of typical shit. And it's really fascinating because this is one example where Trump is kind of going against the consensus establishment. All of the think tanks, all of the neocons, even all of the neoliberals on the media, very, very few of them saw this as a positive thing. And that's just really, really revealing and frankly, just kind of strange. Unfortunately, what Trump should have done, in my opinion, is use this event as the model moving forward for the rest of his presidency. To bask in the glory of this, to swallow his pride, and to actually like sort of move forward on a positive footing. And of course, instead of that, he reverted immediately back to his old ways and was tweeting, whining and complaining about the way the media treated the summit the day after the summit on Twitter. And he even said something like more extreme than he said before about the fake news media, as he calls it. He said the fake news media is the greatest enemy of the American public. The greatest enemy. And on one level, I mean, I could kind of a little bit get on board that the idea that the media is propaganda and it isn't an ally to the American people. However, this is the same man who tells people to watch Fox and Friends, who tells people Sean Hannity is amazing, who promotes the Gateway Pundit. I mean, so it's extremely problematic, obviously. But yet, kind of idiots out there will really sort of take what he's saying in that tweet and really embrace that without seeing all this hypocrisy and contradictions in his own treatment of certain media figures that frankly just like him and that are loyal to him. He doesn't care. If CNN and MSNBC praised him, all the people that he insulted before, he would immediately start being nice to. If Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd, as he calls him, praised him for that summit, he would compliment him. Regardless of his ego, regardless of how fucking terrible he is and how racist he is, this was a good thing. And I think that it can be looked at sort of in isolation because, again, even if he did this for his own ego, it's a really, really positive step in the right direction. Now, my fear is, as I mentioned with Abby earlier on the podcast, is that North Korea, by lowering its guard down like this, could potentially open itself up for a Libya model style regime change eventually. I mean, we don't stick to our deals. Look at the Iran deal. Look at the Libya deal. George W. Bush and Gaddafi kind of struck a deal to stop WMD production. Didn't matter. As soon as a video came out of a couple protesters being shot in Libya during the Arab Spring, boom, NATO bombing starts. So North Korea needs to understand, and I'm sure that they do, they're not, I mean, after reading a lot of these official statements from them recently, they are very astute, very plugged into our media landscape. They're very aware of who John Bolton is. They have to be cautious about this. It'll be very interesting to see if Kim Jong-un staves off sort of the global capitalism. I think that's going to be the real test. But I think one of the main takeaways here, unfortunately, is not, oh, this is great that North Korea and the United States are talking again and that they've struck some kind of deal. The main takeaway is something actually negative and very disturbing, which is that the mainstream media is, and when I say the mainstream media, I mean supposedly the people in the mainstream media that are supposed to be liberal and anti-war. They don't want these right-wing murderous wars, supposedly. They are criticizing Trump from the right. People like Rachel Maddow are actually criticizing Trump's summit with North Korea from the right, saying that he needs to be more hawkish, more punitive, etc. Very, very fascinating. That's something we need to be paying very close attention to. Even if Trump is a pathological liar and a propagandist himself, both sides of this equation are very bad.